As submissions close on whether the high-speed London-Birmingham rail link should go ahead, the government considers new ways to compensate homeowners on the route. No more time for talking. The consultation is almost over. Now the government must decide whether to commission Britain's biggest single building project this century, and it is a massive political decision. The proposed high-speed rail link ploughs right through the Conservative heartlands. The first phase of this multi-billion-dollar project will link London to Birmingham in just 49 minutes, cutting through some of the most beautiful English countryside on the way. Phase 2 would see one line headed to Manchester for a total journey time of 73 minutes and another to Leeds with an 80-minute journey to the capital. This would link into existing services to Scotland, so London to Edinburgh would take just 3.5 hours. A spur would bring Heathrow into the system, cutting out the need for many domestic connecting flights. Another line would connect the existing high-speed line to the Channel Tunnel and onto the continent. The cost, a mere £32 billion, and the high-speed trains to Birmingham won't leave until 2026. Our economics editor Faisal Islam has this report.
The family of Paul Hunt have worked this farm in Kenilworth, Warwickshire for 3 generations. One small railway already breaks up his fields. But soon his property could be cut in half by the 225-mile-an-hour high-speed train linking London and Birmingham.
That's actually about 25 metres, I think, from the house.
The immediate impact of high-speed 2 on those who live close to the route is clear. But can their loss be set against a wider economic gain for the nation, which makes this mega project worthwhile?
I think it'll all come down to money at the end of the day. I find it surprising that we're in such economic difficulties that they can consider spending such a huge amount of money on the scheme.
So if HS2 will affect so many people, why bother? Here's the government's economic case. To build a line and run it for 60 years will cost £44 billion. Fare revenues will raise £27 billion, leaving the government with a £17 billion bill to cover. It calculates the line will create another £44 billion in wider benefits to the economy, so for the government the sums add up about 2.5 times over. There clearly will be wider economic benefits in the city's plan to have stations. This Birmingham factory won't use the line to move its products, but the boss here says quicker links and less congestion will help.
It's going to provide a lot of revenue into local businesses and growth. I see it as a tremendous opportunity. I spend a lot of time in China and I've seen China move into high-speed rail. And you can see the growth as the rail goes, as your infrastructure goes, then the business chases it.
Brittan does have an HS1 here in Kent. It's halved journey times to Ashford, but there are lessons about rather overheated forecasts. A high-speed train whizzes through a British town, a rather rare sight on this island. This Britain's existing network of high-speed lines, just 68 miles long. That compares with 3,500 miles across continental Europe, thousands more miles being built in Asia. But is this reason, national pride, reason enough to extend the network out to Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds? What about value for money? The lesson of this line, that governments and train companies tend to overestimate demand for this type of travel. The government's numbers only have to be slightly wrong on stellar passenger growth, and the cost to taxpayers would rocket, ripping apart the economic case for HS2. However, on HS1 you see the other side of this, that high-speed rail is the potent weapon for changing the geography of Britain's economy. Not that you can put a price on that.
The high-speed train was the reason the key reason we came, really, because I work in London. I've got to get up to London, but we've got 3 small children and we like the idea of kind of village life, which is quite accessible here.
It is possible that these houses here may need to be demolished, but it's a terrace.
But for some on the route of HS2, moving has become more difficult. Lottie Jones in suburban Ruislip says her home, along with many others, faces years of uncertainty and blight from the scheme.
We bought that home in order to extend it and make it into a bigger family home. We can't now do that. We are living in absolute limbo. And there's very little in the way of compensation being offered to us.
The government's looking at a new scheme, a compensatory bond, where homeowners can transfer the promise of compensation to people that might buy their house. In theory, it could underpin house prices in the affected areas. Overall, the economics of HS2 are uncertain. This is a piece of politics with winners and losers in very different places and at very different times.
Faisal Islam reporting. Well, joining us now is the pop mogul and rail enthusiast Pete Waterman and Joe Rukin from the Stop HS2 campaign. Let's start with the micro. I mean, what is the fundamental objection to having it? Is it economic or environmental?
Absolutely. See, the thing is that a lot of us obviously spend a lot of time reading the documents, and when you read them, you realise that there's no business case, there's no environmental case, and there is clearly no money to pay for this project. It's simply a fast train for fat cats. You look at the international comparisons, and what you find is exactly what's happened with High Speed 1, in that the passenger forecasts were grossly exaggerated, and it costs so much more to build than expected.
OK, well, that's a lot of charges. Pete Waterman, your argument for its being built, fundamentally?
You can't not build it. It's as simple as that. There is no economic argument ever to build a railway. There never has been. Mm-hmm. We only have to look at what it's done for this country. You know, one of your people on there said he goes to China and said, look what it's doing in China. We have no choice. Our network is at its capacity. You know, we're running 2011 with a railway that was built in 1854. It's ludicrous.
What about the argument for whether we can afford it?
We can't not afford it. There is no choice. We can't move. The roads are at a standstill. Look at the price of petrol. This is nonsense. This is, you know, it's one of those arguments where you just got to build it and wait 50 years. There is no choice. We've heard all these arguments. The Channel Tunnel. Nobody's now saying we shouldn't have built the Channel Tunnel.
Well, the thing is, High Speed 1 should be carrying 25 million passengers a year now. It's carrying 9. The fact of the matter is that you're going to put in a massive, massive subsidy into something that only benefits the richest in society at a time at which we can't afford anything else. You look at the international
Waterman has actually raised a rather interesting question. He said, would you not have built the Channel Tunnel? Would you not have put HS1 through to the continent?
Well, the thing is...
No, that's the question I want to know the answer to.
Well, I suppose the fact of the matter is that it's cost a massive...
Would you have built it or not?
I don't really know. It seems to have been a bit of a financial failure. It's something that, if you look at it,
so
it
definitely
went bankrupt.
You would not have built
the bottom line is you look at the economic arguments and do the economic arguments for building it have stack up. It looks great, you know, but is that a good argument?
If we're going to have economic arguments, we're never going to build anything. Because I can sit here and make an economic argument for building nothing.
You look at China, they are $304 billion in debt over their high-speed railways, and they can only just about afford to pay the interest on those debts.
But as Pete Waterman has already said, surely, there has never been an economic argument for building a railway, ever, from the beginning. You accept that?
It seems that way.
So why use the economic argument as the issue? The issue, surely, in the end, is much bigger than that, isn't it?
John, can I just point out that in 1960, we built our first motorway. We didn't touch our rail infrastructure. You would not expect anybody to get in a Ford Fiesta in 1960 today and travel to Manchester every day 3 times a day. Because that's what we're asking people to do.
There is a massive difference between the motorways and high-speed railway. Motorways have junctions. They benefit the areas that they go through. They benefit far
you would
more
always build
people.
another motorway then, would you?
No, I didn't say that.
But then you can't have your cake and eat it.
You want to solve the problem of the capacity. There's a very simple issue. We have 8 carriages on trains. You can have longer trains, 12 carriages. That is a much cheaper solution.
No, you're on dicey ground there because he's a trained man.
You can't get them on the network. We've got no space now, whether it's 14 coaches or 8. We cannot.
It's a ridiculous, spurious argument.
In this argument, no, sorry, in this piece. This is what amazes me about the answer. You don't even know anything about railways.
You're talking about the 1960s.
You haven't even got the fundamental things about the railways.
You're talking about
capacity.
There's the heat. Let's have the light.
Rubbish.
Let's have the light. Now, we've talked about the micro. Let's just talk about where this fits in Britain. Britain is, I think you probably accept, tailor-made for railways, and that presumably is why they've been such a success. What would you do about the fact that this is, leaving aside the considerations of the people who actually live along this line, the real issue, this is the beginning of something much bigger, which links up much more of the country than just Birmingham?
That's very much true. That's a plan for it.
Well, I mean, it's like asking somebody...
No, it's not. That's a plan for it. But basically what you're doing is you're connecting very few points. You're connecting Birmingham to Leeds to Manchester. You're not even connecting Leeds and Manchester. One of the arguments is this is going to benefit the north. It's going to it's a magic wand to solve the north-south divide.
Well, where do you live?
Going to Birmingham, Manchester.
Where do you live?
I live near Coventry, Pete.
Well, I live in Warrington, and you know what? I can do London to Euston, and I started commuting from Coventry 30 years ago, and before I started, it was 2 hours and 30 minutes. Then, when they electrified it, it went down to 62 minutes. And now I can do Warrington to London in 1 hour and 38 minutes.
Yes.
That's what railways do. But
Yeah.
we can't do it.
But you won't be able to do that when high-speed rail is built, because that's one of the hidden arguments in this. I came down from Coventry today. That took me an hour. When high-speed rail goes ahead, that means that fewer trains to Coventry. There's 3 an hour, and they take an hour. That means fewer trains from Coventry because you can't justify the service because you cut out the Birmingham to London stretch.
No, but you're telling me
so
that
it means
you can't attract
fewer trains.
Well, Pete Waterman, I mean,
it means there's going to be fewer trains that are going to take longer.
The charge against you is that you're prepared to ride roughshod over beautiful countryside, people's homes.
No, John, I don't believe we have a choice. The country is at a standstill. I hear people talking about we used to be a great nation. Well, you know what? We can't be a great nation if you can't move your people around. And 50% more people travel on trains.
And I suppose
where are they going to put these trains?
This is the bombastic argument that we keep getting. Oh, we've got to do it. It's going to be great. We really need it. You look at the figures. You look at the facts. You look at the environmental case.
Do you travel by train?
No.
Let me ask you a final...
I just told you I came down on the train.
a final
do you
question.
travel every day?
Let me just ask you a final...
every day.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
You see, I travel 3 times a week,
let me just ask you
600
3
miles.
times a week is not every
Chaps,
day.
I'm going to have to
Okay.
break in here because, alas, I had many more questions, but I can't ask you. But thank you both very much indeed
Thank
for
you very
coming
much.
in.